Life isn't perfect, and neither are we.
No, but we know how to face our fears
And have some fun.
and talk about all the messiest things of life.
Like the messiest things.
Get connected to yourself, get connected to others, and get connected to the life right in front of you.
This is The Connected Life with Justin and Abby.
That's me.
That's you.
And you. Oh, you guys, this is part 2, which I'm so excited about.
Yay, yay, yay.
Yay. Me and Rachel, we kicked Justin out. No, that's
Girl
just kidding.
time.
He had too much estrogen, Phil. No, just kidding. He actually his body was tired because he's been working all day. But me and Rachel were like, we can talk about this stuff forever.
Oh, yeah.
So we were like, bring it on. In case you guys didn't listen to last week's episode, we started just kind of talking about the journey of me being sick and Rachel's mother-in-law dying of ALS in the middle of us both growing up in
Charismatic healing culture.
environments.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think like, as we were talking about it, I was like, oh my gosh, there's so much that I've learned in hindsight where I can look back on. I mean, I think it was really probably like 2 years ago was the last time we recorded episodes about sickness and healing
Wow. Yeah.
on the podcast. I
You've
haven't
been
really.
on a long journey since then.
Yes.
You've gotten a lot of great pieces.
I haven't really talked about it while I was doing that because I don't believe in preaching things while you're learning them.
Period. I don't believe it.
Just preaching in general, it's bad.
This is bad. Sound.
Yeah. No, I don't believe in leading people through something while you're just learning it yourself.
Yeah.
And
100%.
and so oftentimes there's a lot of things that I'm really wrestling through and working out internally before I'm publicly explaining it.
Yeah.
And
Just
that's
so safe.
Yeah.
And such a beautiful.
And I'm talking to all
quality.
my people, like my friends know about what I'm going through because I think vulnerability is important. But I have in the past been too vulnerable
Same.
where it wasn't helpful.
Yeah.
You know, like I need to guard the process that I'm on so that I can get through it and then we can talk all
100%.
about it. So, although I am an open book, if people ask me if it's a one-on-one conversation, I'll share whatever. But anyway, so we were talking about that, and I thought me and Rachel have both been through actually diagnosed PTSD. I think like PTSD is now like used as a term for everything. Like I went to McDonald's and they didn't have French fries and I have PTSD.
And it was traumatizing.
Yes. Like, and I use those terms too. So I'm not even shaming anybody, but I would like to say there are really real things that is real trauma that
we
has
got a
deep
form that
effects.
said that it was true.
Yeah. Yep.
At least I did. I was like, oh, I can go to a doctor and say, here you go.
No.
I have that.
That's nice.
Yeah.
A signed form.
A signed form.
So I thought we just kind of continue the talk through maybe some of the realizations we've both had after PTSD, and that will probably continue on my thoughts about God around healing.
Yeah.
Just because that's what we started the conversation around, and I think that's what I've spent a lot of the last 2 years trying to wrestle through and sort out.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we'll start with that. But when we were ending our last podcast, you said something and I thought it'd be worth repeating for the audience.
Yeah, I had a little bit of a tear in my eye because at the end of the last session, Abby was praying for everyone and she was like, one day, like you will be able to come back into yourself and you'll be able to feel joy and it won't last forever. And I remember you told me that in probably the middle part of my darkest season in the aftermath of everything when I was probably like very close to death in my eating disorder and all of the wild things that I did to survive trauma. And I can really actually say that that's true, what you said. And there's something really powerful about feeling that truth inside of my own self of like, actually, no, like my life is evidence that that can happen, that trauma can end. Like, and it's not necessarily saying that I don't have after effects or it's not like, oh, and then we had to quick fix.
Everything's magical
and it
now.
magically went. But I was like, but that is actually true of my story. Like I worked really hard, but also like I feel genuine joy. I feel genuine softness. I feel genuine like belief in the goodness of the world and the goodness of humanity. And I feel genuinely happy to be alive and on this planet.
It's huge.
And genuinely like present and not like in a bubble of dissociation all the time. And so I think it's just helpful for someone to say that it's possible. Like it wasn't wild work.
Yeah.
It was wild work, but it was
hard.
possible. And I'm still absolutely on the journey, but
Sure.
It just felt really beautiful in my own story to have a moment of like you saying to everyone else that can happen. You can
And
come
you
back
realizing
into like that's actually what happened for me.
Yeah.
Like, and honestly, when you told me, I had a lot. When you told me that, I was like, I'm just gonna believe it because I believe Abby.
It's fair.
But
It's
I don't know. Like, I felt
Yeah.
genuinely afraid that like a part of me was broken and would never be okay again.
Yeah.
Like, I think that was a true feeling inside my own soul. Like,
Oh, totally.
I think I'll just be shattered, and I think this is just who I am now. I'll never like return to a sense of okayness.
Yeah. You know, I was just having a conversation yesterday with somebody who was talking about her own story, and she was saying the same thing. I'm holding on because you say that I won't always feel this way. And she'd been through something, you know, she went through a trauma that feels really clear and able to see. And she's like maybe a year and a half into it. And I'm like, girl, a year and a half into my trauma, I still was like completely like, I will never be okay ever again.
100%.
My soul is broken.
Yeah.
I might just shrivel and die. Like I was not in a place where I believed that there was hope for me to be put back together. I just think some breakings are so deep on such a, like for me, it was so deep, the fabric of my personality that got
I feel like
broken.
it was ripped apart.
That I thought I will never be put back together.
Yeah.
And I also am in the same place where I don't feel like my process is over, but I now feel like I made it up the hill. And like now we're just like if it was a bicycle, I don't know how this is being put back together, but if it was a bicycle, I'd like ridden up the hill, and now there's some neutral ground that I'm riding on, but that's pretty easy. It's just more work, but I've got the momentum now. It's not uphill so much. And I have the feelings, the glimmers. I think it's such a funny, do you know that's a scientific term?
Yeah, I think so.
Which I think is crazy. And I feel sad that I didn't make it up. But glimmers are the ability, the aware, they're anti-triggers.
Yes.
Is what they call them.
Isn't that a fun way of saying it?
I know. I love it.
It's a fun sounding word. So I like that it's a fun sounding word to anti-trigger.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
And so the idea is like those feelings where you feel connected to yourself, those feelings where you feel connected to somebody that you're around.
Yeah.
Those feelings where you feel joy or hope, where you feel the sun on your skin and you're just thankful. Those feelings when you laugh and it was like you genuinely laughed from your soul. Like those feelings are glimmers. And I wish I could go back and tell myself like you're going to have glimmers until like you said in the last thing, until it becomes a glow. Until you can live back in your own body and in your own skin.
Yeah.
It's just true. She did ask me, I thought this was great. She was like, did you tell on the podcast what happened that caused your PTSD? She's like, did I miss that one episode? And I told her no, which this will be helpful for everybody. I just give the clarity.
Yeah.
No, I didn't. I haven't talked about it. And it doesn't mean that I won't. But I had a friend who asked me about what happened and I was like, okay, I'm going to tell them. So I sat down. What's the simplest, quickest way I could describe what happened? And it was 25 bullet points of traumatic events.
Oh my gosh, that's so true.
Because there was 25 things that happened in about a year and a half. And it was the culmination of all of them that like it filled my cup of trauma until the cup literally shattered.
Wow. Yeah.
And so that is like, it wasn't just one event. It was an amalgamation of events that then unlocked all of the PTSD that I actually already had. But like I had enough coping skills to, I don't know, ignore or push through. I could push through. I could push through, my PTSD symptoms until there was such trauma that it like broke all of my ability to have reserves or capacity to be able to handle it.
Yeah, that's a great way of saying it. I remember a therapist named Auntie Kolber. I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name wrong, but she says that you can lose it's a very gory analogy, but she said you can lose your hand in two different ways. She said someone could chop it off and that would be a traumatic event, or you could get 1,000 paper cuts that then become infected and then you'd have to amputate it off.
Oh, gosh.
And I think to myself, that's actually probably a pretty good way to describe complex trauma.
Complex PTSD.
Yeah, which is what you're talking about.
Well, mine more felt like I had like 5 fingers cut off and then it was bleeding so much we cut my whole hand off. It didn't feel like, because all of them were major big events were very huge. And I look back and I'm like, man, I look back and I'm like, I'm a freaking boss, because one of those events could have caused me PTSD, one of them. And they all happened. And so I'm like, I freaking survived. There's like some kind of power you get on this other side where you're like, I made it through something that would break most people. And I'm coming back.
Yeah, that feels true.
Does that feel true for your story?
Yeah. I mean, I think the 1,000 paper cuts were like my childhood.
Yes, 100%.
And then I got like one big cut in the middle.
Yes.
In my later life.
Well, maybe then in your later life, you had your hand chopped off also. Maybe you just had both.
You know, that also maybe feels a little
like you had 1,000 paper cuts and then your hand got chopped off.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a validating kind of way of thinking about it to me, I think, because it is the idea of like, I think there's not enough, at least for me, I didn't have enough compassion on like how the culmination of things together could snap you in a very specific way. Yeah. That where I felt out of my mind. Like this is the end. And I think in my logic, I was sort of like, I don't understand why this was so hard. So I think I had less like the 5 fingers are off. They all make sense why they're hard. I was like, I've been through hardship before. Why is this one the one that I can't seem to come back from no matter how hard I try?
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Trauma is trauma. Listen, it comes in a lot of different ways.
True.
And it shows up in a lot of different things. For you, if you were to describe some of the things that you feel like have helped you come out of trauma, what would you describe?
Yeah. Oh gosh. Well, I think that discovering what safety actually is and what safety actually feels like. To be honest, there was a sense of like when I started to feel it a little bit, of like what safety felt like in my body, of like my awareness of like imminent threat is not happening right in this exact moment. I kind of felt like, do people feel this? That was sort of like the idea.
Is this what other people experience?
Is this like what some people who didn't have chaotic lives in their childhood feel like normally? Like that's kind of how it felt like. And I could feel it almost like a sense of like something that I'd missed that I was coming home to for the first time. And so to me, I mean, honestly, I had after my PTSD with my mother-in-law, and it sort of like unlocked a lot of.
To recap for people, her mother-in-law died a horrific, gruesome death from ALS, and she was there through the whole process living with her.
Yeah. And then, you know, there was enough components about that sort of mirrored my childhood, sort of just perfect. Just
brought
right.
up a lot of childhood stuff.
Yes. Just exploded a lot of the things that had sort of lived sort of dormant under the surface for a lot of my life and sort of just went, well, here we are. And then I developed as a coping strategy a real strong eating disorder where I almost starved to death. So I brought myself really to like the brink of where you can be. I had at one point people who were my team. I ended up needing a team to help me live. And then my team were like, you know, you were like a cold away from death. Like if you just like gotten a cold, you would have been organ failure. You would have been done. So I remember, I know this sounds so like the first stages for me was like just getting some sense of like predictability and consistency and safety and structure. Like, I know that's not like really exciting thing to say, but that's honestly what helped me. Like, it was literally like I would eat and then I would go for a little bit of a walk. And then I had very like a patterned
a schedule
of like things that felt predictable and safe. And I think a lot of it was like, can I touch a sense of safety like at least once every day? That was like a thing that I really tried to do.
And like when you say touch a sense of safety for people listening, what could that have looked like?
Yeah. I think that I did a lot of like sort of body oriented things because at the time that's what my therapist and my team were like helping me do.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of like, I'm going to sit on this couch and like look around my room and count like 20 objects that are nice to look at. And can I ground to some sort of sense of like something in my environment or my world that represents almost like an anchor, I guess, to something in this present moment that is cueing to me that right now I'm okay. I think I forget who says it, so sorry about that. But there's a quote that says, oftentimes trauma lives in the past or the perceived future, but often not in the present moment. And so I think that was
literally right now, no trauma is happening to you right now.
Yeah.
Like right now, no one's beating you. No one is trying to steal all of your stuff.
There's not a tiger coming in the room.
There's not a tiger coming in the room. I'm not emotionally attacking you.
Yeah.
Like right now, you're actually totally safe.
100%.
If you're in the present.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, from a PTSD perspective to my body, the trauma was ongoing.
Absolutely.
And I think that's important to mention
I agree.
like to the memory and the sort of like, to the memory in your body sort of activates and sort of prepares for that traumatic event. And then if there's not like sort of a conscious deactivation where we sort of come back to some sort of sense of homeostasis or some sort of sense of like, we're okay. The thing that had happened that was so horrible is over. Then that experience sort of just keeps replaying in your body over and over and over and over again. Yeah. And I think for me, because I had grown up in a really chaotic way, it was almost like my nervous system was just set to that.
To chaos.
Was set to chaos, was set to the sense of needing to brace for the next hard thing all the time. Yeah. And so a lot of what my therapist did was things that honestly at the time felt a little dumb to me. Like I'm going to be totally transparent about it. I've done like a lot of freaking therapy in my life. I've been in therapy since I was 11 years old.
Me too, girl.
So many hours of recounting my trauma.
Stories.
Stories about myself forever, which, you know, I think has a lot of value. But one thing I was always thought like, oh, I wish I would have known this. But often when you're just narrating the trauma of your story, you kind of are just like reliving it over and over and over again.
So your nervous system is actually just replaying the panic or the fear or even if you don't feel it consciously.
Yeah, 100%. And I read recently, someone was talking about how that can become so regular to you that it just feels like you.
Normal.
It just feels like who you are.
Yeah.
And I would say that's just kind of how it felt true. And partially why I kind of thought I could just totally be a caretaker to someone and or like be in a situation with a high level of trauma. And I just sort of thought like, why not?
Yeah. I'm used to this.
I could totally do that. That won't break me. That'll break other people, but not me. That's kind of how I felt. So a lot of like what was really significant and important for me in coming out of trauma was just saying, can I cue to my system, to my nervous system, to my body that right now the trauma is not occurring. And it doesn't even mean that I need to know that trauma will never happen again. In fact, there's probably a chance that it will. In fact, maybe a high level, like my husband could die. Things really hard could happen in my life. But can I orient to the present moment and bring my body into awareness that is not happening right now? Yeah.
Yeah. I remember being with my trauma counselor and just being like, I'm not okay. I'm never going to be 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 safe. And the thing I made up in my head, like we always make up things. Like I was like, to feel safe, I'd probably need like a mom and a dad who adopt me, who feel really powerful and stable, and who love me radically for like 10 years. And then maybe my nervous system could unwind and believe that I was safe. Yeah. Like that is the imagine. And I was like, I know that's not possible. I know that's not going to happen. Like I'm not going to just magically be parented for my whole, for 10 years straight with people who have no needs or none of their own emotions or none of their own life issues affecting things. Like I need people who are so stable in every way to be able to come and take care of me.
That craving is
long
so
enough so that I can feel safe again. And I remember just the constant panic of like, I'm never going to be safe. Like I couldn't think of anything that would make me feel safe, anything that could help me be safe. And it was the same idea, which was my nervous system. And when I look back at being sick, I was in constant fight or flight or freeze. Honestly,
or
I probably went through all of them.
Yeah.
I went through all of them. And so it was, and your nervous system is like, I don't have any good analogies coming to my brain, but basically when you're activated, it's like an alarm going off. Like if you think about like a fire alarm going off, and I don't know if you've ever been in a building where the fire alarm is going off all the time, like for no reason. There's no fire, but the fire alarm is going off. And it is annoying, and you start to feel like
on edge and like you're going to come out of your skin.
Yes. Yeah. That's a great example. That is what your nervous system is like when it is stuck or in fight or flight. And so like, yes, were there fires that happened? Yeah. Totally. But then the fire alarm did not turn off in my body, and it did not turn off in my brain. And then my brain in PTSD, you're hyper focused on looking for anything that could create pain again.
Yeah.
And so my fire alarm is on. I'm sick all the time. And so every time my body gets a little bit worse, my fire alarm.
It's like, woo.
Yeah. Like it's just like panic is surging through me, but I'm never really getting to a place. And so I'm constantly maybe having the volume turn up on the fire alarm, but I'm never getting to a place where the fire alarm stops for a few minutes.
Yeah. And even just for the neuro nerds out there, it actually is biological that part of your brain, I forget how to say it, the paradoxical gray or whatever, in PTSD literally is in a state of just lit up all the time. And that is the part of you that is gathering information through the five senses to prove whether or not you need to run or freeze or flight from the situation. And in PTSD, your brain is just set to on.
Yes. You're viewing everything as a threat.
Yes.
And everything. And so you're constantly like just recircling through the loop. I'm being threatened, so I'm protecting. I'm being threatened, so I'm protecting. I'm being threatened, so I'm protecting. Yeah. And my body, I think, couldn't get out of it either. And I think that has a lot to do with being sick.
That your body itself was sort of cueing to you that it was unsafe.
Yeah. My body was cueing to me that it was unsafe, and it was in constant stress, which causes so much sickness and causes so much pain in your body. Like if you think about being tensed up all day, your muscles ache at the end of being tensed up. Like I remember one time the dentist was like, you can relax. And I didn't even realize that I'd been being tensed. I was like, I didn't even notice I was tense. So I relaxed. But like if you brace your muscles for a long time, it hurts. So your body is not meant to have your nervous system freaking out the whole time. And so for me, here I was spending all of my energy focusing on, God, I need you to heal me. Now, I also did other things. Like I was in counseling for trauma, and I was looking up doctors. I wasn't just, there was
very
so many,
proactive.
I was proactive, but I also, and seeing doctors and trying different methodologies and all that stuff, trying different prescriptions, trying different, treatments. I've tried a million treatments. So, but but I was latching on to, this is what we talked about in the last episode, the idea of, if I get healed, honestly, what that represented is then my nervous system will calm down. Then I will feel safe. Then I will feel like, then I will be back in my body, I'll be okay again.
Yeah.
And the confusing thing is when you're sick, your body doesn't feel safe to live in.
Yeah.
So you are feeling like there's a constant threat that I need to get out of my body for. And
100%.
the irony is getting back in your body is one of the most important things to getting safe.
Yeah.
But that feels counterintuitive when your body feels like the thing that is unsafe, which I'm sure you understand because that'd be similar to an eating disorder, I'm imagining.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And yeah, it's like, it feels so like as you're saying, like almost like counterintuitive, like you're trying to like push against a wave coming at you. Like it feels like, yeah. And I would have a lot of panic in my body too, because it was like my body remembered what it was like to almost die and then watch somebody else die. So I'd have a lot of panic on the inside. And yeah, it was like, and which honestly brings me so much compassion for why I was so focused on like any outside sense of soothing, like any other thing that I could control or any other solution or any other thing at all, because the very thing that I needed to be able to feel safe was to get into my body. And my body felt like a chaotic war ground.
Totally.
Where all of my hatred for myself lived.
Yes.
And so getting into that experience felt like herding cats.
Totally.
Like trying to get a cat into a box that's like squirming out and doesn't want that experience at all.
Well, and it's interesting because I remember when I started recognizing I was really dissociated, really out of my body, stuck in trauma. And I wish somebody could have explained this to me. Listen, I wish that the church was more trauma informed. I wish that counselors were more trauma informed. I just want to give a shout out really quick because I've seen counselors my whole life and none of them were trauma informed. Yeah. And maybe they would have said they were, but they were not. And I know that this is we are in an age right now where trauma information is available, which is awesome. So we can actually learn about what's going on in our brains and our bodies and why we're doing what we're doing. But where was I going with all that? Trauma informed. What were we talking about?
We're talking about
getting in my body. What I wish somebody would have said. Getting back into my body wasn't about having to experience all the pain of the sickness. It wasn't about having what I imagined getting back into my body meant was like, now I have to just sit in the thing that is hurting me so bad. Now I have to just be aware of all the pain I have. Like my body was in excruciating pain. And so the idea of getting in my body meant I'm going to have to just feel excruciating pain.
Yeah.
And that is not what getting back in my body means. And that is not what the journey was for me. And so, but I think we have so much fear of that we resist it. I resisted 100%. It way longer than I needed to because I had the wrong definition of what it meant, where really it was a lot more of learning how to feel. I ended up not focusing on all the pain going on in my body. Yeah. I learned how to feel moments of safety in my body. Yeah. And it came from, instead of like, so very much like you talked about looking for like one moment of safety to anchor to every day. So for me, it would be like, what is something, a safe body thing I could feel? So like maybe I'm laying on the couch next to Justin and I can feel the warmth of his body next to mine. And it feels like, and that feels like a positive sensation. Yeah. Now my brain was hyper-focused on pain. So my brain would be like, yes, you feel that warmth from him, but you also feel this and this and this and this. Totally. And so my brain would draw me away from the thing that felt really safe good word to use. To actually like obsess again about how unsafe I was. And so I had to actually learn to be like, I'm actually not thinking about all of that right now. Yeah. I'm not actually going to go back into my body and think through all of the physical sensations I'm having. Yeah. Because that felt horrible. People would be like, what's going on in your body? I'm like, you want me to think about all the places I feel pain right now? Yeah. That sounds horrible. Yeah. But what I could do is like, okay, I can feel Justin's hand on my back. It feels warm. I know he loves me. I'm just going to think about that. Oh, but my stomach hurts. No, I'm not going to think about that right now. I'm just going to think about how I can feel Justin's hand on my back and how that feels good. Or like what I learned to do is look for that one step change. So it's like, if I go outside and the sun is out, I will go from like maybe a 9 of threat level to an 8.
Yes.
I don't change dramatically. It's not like, oh, now I feel great. Oh, my PTSD is gone.
100%.
But I would feel just this little lift.
Yeah.
Just this little moment of like,
yeah.
the sun feels good on my skin.
Yeah.
Oh, that feels good. And I started looking for those moments.
So good.
Of just that little, like you're on a walk and you just realize that you felt like slightly energized, or you realized I just was able to have a conversation while I was on this walk and it felt like normal, or, any kind of, or like, wow, the sunset is beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay, I'm just going to think about how thankful I am for the sunset. Like, it's just looking for that small thing and then focusing on it. You talked about this in the last episode, turning a glimmer into a glow. Yeah. Which is becoming mindful of it. So like, okay, what does the sunset make me feel in my body? So now I'm not thinking, what is all the pain in my body? Yeah. I'm thinking, what does the sunset make me feel? I feel a little bit more relaxed. I feel gratitude, which can feel kind of like an energy, like a little bit of like tingles. I can feel like something is good. Sometimes it's like halfway feelings, halfway thoughts, halfway emotions, but it's describing what is and then the more I think about it, the more I can feel it.
Yeah. 100%. And I think it feels wonderful what you're talking about, because it's so the opposite of trigger brain, because trigger brain is so, or even like threat center brain is very all or nothing. It's like, I get to feel miserable until everything is totally safe, and then I'll finally get to feel good.
Yes.
And then it's very like on off switch is
it's
like
black
how we
or white.
imagine
it's
going to be.
Everything's safe or nothing
at all. And I would have like a term that I would use in my head over and over: safe enough. Just looking for safe enough would be what I would say to myself all the time. And it's a lot of what you're describing. Like, can I just feel like a little bit of something that is a little bit nicer than what I was feeling 20 minutes ago? Yeah. Can I feel like there's a little bit of something available, a little bit of like a crack in the wall that lets a little bit of a light through? Yeah. And I think even that feels like it resets me. And I really relate to what you're talking about as far as the pull of the negative bias or the pull of the pain. Because, and I have a lot of compassion on myself. Like, it's like, oh, that part of me is like really wanting to let me know that what had happened really impacted me. Yes. And so I got in the habit of being like, it's almost like sending that part of me compassion. Like, I know that you're really wanting to tell me about this really painful experience. That experience matters. But right now, we need to be able to touch goodness so that we actually can handle the pain that is there, that is living inside of me already. And I remember my counselor, he would, it felt so counterintuitive to me, because again, every counselor that I'd seen beforehand weren't very trauma informed. A lot of them were great. Yeah. But I didn't have a trauma person working with me all the time until I had PTSD. And I remember I would touch a trigger and I'd be like, oh, this is the trailhead that we go on. Like, we're going to follow this. And
just tell the story.
I'm going to tell the story. And we're going to talk about my mom. And I'm going to feel the feelings. And I'm probably going to cry for 10,000 years. And I would just like ramp up to have that experience. And it's almost like I'd almost be ready to fall off a cliff. And he'd like grab my collar and bring me back over.
We're not talking about that.
He would just redirect me over and over and over again.
To safety.
To something safe. And at first I felt like, this is boring. Is this going to do anything for me?
And you're like, this is not getting us anywhere.
Yeah. I'm like, but I had got to go process the pain.
I need to go cry about that pain for forever or grieve it, or I need to get it out.
Yes. And I think what I didn't realize was like my consciousness of awareness of safety impacts the level of pain that I could actually process. So if my safety awareness was at like a 2, really more than a 2 of pain would dysregulate me. And once I would be in that sense of dysregulation, then feeling that is not actually really productive for my soul anymore.
You.
Yeah. And so it was like, oh, I started to recognize, like, as I grew my awareness of sense of safety, as I brought that up to a higher level, I could have moments where I could let the pain out in spurts. Like the analogy that I like to give a lot of the time was, it felt like I was a soda bottle that the cap was screwed on real tight, and I had been shaken up. And that's like what it felt like in my body, was like all of this chaotic energy of like, and the pressurized of that experience. And as my safety began to grow, it was almost like we could uncap it and like let a little bit of the pressure out at the time and then screw it back on and then go do something else that felt resourceful or felt positive or felt good. And then grow my sense of safety awareness and my capacity for that again. And it was like trying to anchor myself in safety. And I recognized like, oh, if I don't have a foot in safety, then
processing pain is pointless.
Yeah. And then it's telling myself the same thing that trauma was happening in my body already, which was re-solidifying the idea of this is not over. This is never going to be over. It's still happening. You need to be protected all the time. It's ongoing. If you're not in a protected state constantly, this new thing could happen at any given moment. Like it was just proving my history over and over and over again.
Yeah. And I think that this is why I did talk therapy for years and retold the same stories for years.
100%.
And I never got out.
Yeah.
Like my nervous system still stayed, like my body memories. So I might have logically, no, I think the logic was really helpful because there was a lot of really twisted thoughts and beliefs I had from my childhood. And so there was a lot of like ahas of like, oh, actually when your mom wanted to die, it wasn't your fault. I needed to logically start thinking that way.
Yeah.
I needed the talk therapy
100%.
in certain ways. But then I also I think talk therapy helps you understand your story.
Yeah.
And that's really important. But it also meant so I have the same memory of my mom wanting to die.
Yeah.
And me, feeling so much pressure. Like how am I going to how am I going to make her happy enough that she doesn't kill herself? And the pressure of feeling that. And how many times have I talked through that memory in counseling? 500. So, and what happens is I can talk through it and feel resolved and feel great. I can cry about it and feel resolved. But if my body memory, if my nervous system doesn't experience some kind of safety, then my body memory, even though my brain might have logically understood it differently, my body memory will keep bringing that memory up.
Yes.
It'll keep bringing those feelings up. It'll keep bringing my nervous system cycle up to that.
And there's a phrase that I really like that's called story follows state. So what we're talking about is like the state of the nervous system. So the story that you will automatically start narrating to yourself follows often the state of your nervous system. It can be like a little bit of a back and forth situation, but a lot of the time, like if my body is remembering the trauma and I am now having an experience in my body that's saying it is happening now, my brain will then make sense of it.
So it'll be like, oh, Abby must be causing me this because we're sitting and doing a podcast and there's nothing else happening, but I'm feeling anxiety. So she must be talking over me.
100%. And it's like your brain has a little bit of like a fill in the blank, like an autofill system on your phone when you type something into Google. And it's like that. It's like our nervous system tells us danger, danger, danger. And that is, again, often happening below the level of conscious awareness.
So subconsciously.
We're not even like really logically thinking to yourself. We just like all of a sudden are flooded with that experience in our body. And then our brain goes, what in the world around me makes sense to why I might feel this way? So now I'm thinking about, oh, Abby must hate me.
Totally.
And that's probably why I'm feeling this way. And then if you are just logically processing, then you spend a lot of time
talking through that story,
being like I did this for years within our relationship, which was trying to rationalize, Abby doesn't hate me. Abby likes me. Abby thinks the best about me. I'm going to say over myself 10 million times that Abby thinks that I doesn't think. And my nervous system was set to specifically threat with women of authority. And so my body was experiencing that
threat every time you were around
every time that I'm around. And there was a sense of trying to just approach it logically was a little bit like trying to get water out of a sinking boat with a bucket.
Totally.
Like it's maybe like keeping the boat
helping.
It's keeping the boat like above
but it's
the
a
water.
lot of freaking work.
But it's a lot of
and
freaking
you're not
work.
really getting progress.
Yeah, 100%. And so to me, what really started shifting my whole overall experience was when I started addressing the body and my body safety. And then it was like, I remember having a couple moments after therapy where I really felt like, it's quiet in here. Was probably the sense that I felt like, not that I wasn't having thoughts, but it was like all of a sudden the tone of my narration internally like soothed.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like this sense of like, yeah, like all of a sudden everything just got a little bit quieter.
Mm-hmm.
And the noise got turned down a lot more. And then it was like I started to genuinely believe more
Mm-hmm.
that the world around me was safer.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that loop started. Then you get in a flow of a positive loop
Mm-hmm.
where you're like, oh, see, now I can see these positives. And that's proving to me in my nervous system that I am safe. And then my nervous system feels safe. And so that's proving to me that my world is safe. And that is like a really wonderful sort of loop to be a part of.
It's basically like your brain is programmed to either look for threat or safety.
Yeah.
And in trauma, we get stuck looking at safety. And so our brain is bringing we get
Threat.
stuck at threat. Sorry.
Yeah.
So our brain is looking for everything that could cause any kind of threat and keeping us on
100%.
alert. And so we have to reprogram our brain how to look to safety.
Yeah.
And I actually had a friend get healed this way.
Wow.
She did a program called Dynamic Neural Retraining System.
Oh, yeah.
And so she had been chronically sick and was like allergic to every single thing. And so she had she spent an hour every day practicing, like actually getting her body and her brain into thinking about safe things.
Yeah.
And it changed her whole life. Like her sickness stopped completely.
Yeah.
She wasn't able to even like stay in houses because she was so allergic to everything.
Wow.
Had only like a few things she could eat. But
Wow.
so I'd seen that happen before, but it just sounded like a lot of work to me. Like when
Sure.
she described it, I was like, oh, I just can't do that. That feels like too much work.
Totally.
But then I went through PTSD where I had no choice but to try to figure it out. And I realized it wasn't as much work as I thought it was.
Because it does start feeling a little bit nice.
Because it feels good.
There's reward.
Yes, there's reward. And so then when your brain, like you said, you can flip the switch to then your brain is looking for safety all the time.
Yeah.
And it's seeing safety. And then it like becomes momentous and it becomes like a snowball that gains momentum.
Yeah.
I remember, because I think it's helpful for people to hear how basic this can be. But for me, one of the things that helped me feel the safest was sitting in a chair and my consciousness of the chair.
Yes.
Which is so silly to me. But so in my PTSD, like in the events that happened, it was like all these events happened where I was the only powerful, capable person in a big trauma scenario.
Yeah.
And then that brought up all of the memories of me feeling that way through a lot of crazy situations.
Yeah.
And so the feeling of I am alone and I have to be on at all times and I need to be taken care of, like that, I was so locked into it. And so a chair, I just remember my counselor being like, I want you to just think about how you are not holding that chair up. Like no part of you. And like, think about the fact that you're sitting fully resting in that chair, like fully, like you're not holding it up and you're not holding your body up. Like you're not sitting like, but secretly like holding your butt above it just a little bit so you don't put too much pressure on it. Like I don't have the capacity. I am like fully sitting in this chair. It is fully supporting my body. And then I started just thinking about how safe it feels to have something holding me up that is not me.
Yeah.
To have something that I can count on this chair, honestly, because I don't think it's going to break right now.
Yeah.
At least for this whole podcast, I'm sure it's going to be fine, and that's what I had to learn to do with my brain is don't go into future tripping because future will be like, but this chair won't last forever. That's what trauma fear does.
So true.
It will disqualify any sense of safety you have. So if I felt, and that was the problem, if I felt safe with Justin, it'd be like, but I won't feel safe
100%
for the rest of forever. Or I feel safe in this house, but what if the house burns down?
Yeah.
It was a constant chaos because my brain could always disqualify anything good. So I had to be like, no. I don't think this chair will last forever. That's not, and again, my brain told me I need something for forever before I can allow myself to feel safe.
Totally.
And I learned, no, that's not the truth. I just need a moment right now. All I need is a moment of safety. I don't need safety forever.
Yeah.
And my brain kept telling me I need safety forever before I can let myself sink in. And I've learned instead, I just need moments of safety that collect the same way the trauma collected.
Yeah.
The same way that it was like, you talked about 1,000 paper cuts on your hand.
Yeah.
You can actually just get 1,000 neosporins like wiped on your hand and it can heal.
Yeah.
Like, and so the idea of being like, okay, I'm in this chair right now and it's fully holding me up and it's fully supporting me. And the floor is now, this is so great. This is how you know how unsafe I felt. Like that I can now feel safe by thinking about how the floor is not falling out underneath me.
Yeah.
I'm like, the floor is stable. Like we know that the table and our chairs are not going, like we're not in it. And sometimes contrast is how I feel safe.
Oh yeah. That makes sense.
Which is like, the floor's not falling out from underneath me. That's what emotionally my life felt like for a long time. So I was like, the floor is solid.
Yeah.
Right now in this moment. I don't have to figure out if it'll be solid forever. Like who knows, an earthquake could happen, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
I let those thoughts by. I'm like, no, this is not the thought to think through. Will this floor always be solid? It's just, will this floor be solid right now?
Yeah.
This floor is solid right now. The chair is solid on it. I am being held by a floor and by a chair. And it is not moving and it is not changing. This floor is not changing personalities. This floor is not like up one day, down another. I don't have to be like, will the floor be level today or not? Like, and so I just started thinking through, what are all of the safe things like about the floor? Like right now, I'm like, gosh, it's so dependable. The floor is there every day when I wake up in our house. And the floor is sturdy and the floor is not moving and the floor is not buckling and the floor is like I can count on it. There is something that I can count on that is the same. Now, I can do that now. Yeah. And I actually was experiencing
feel the feelings of it.
A sense of safety.
I can feel it hearing you talk about it.
Yes. Yeah. I could actually experience safety thinking about that. And so because my brain told me before the healing process that it has to be these big grand gestures of safety for me to get unhooked.
100%. And I think for me, I did a lot of similar things. Like I did a lot of visualizations of things that were just sort of solid. And, I think especially for me, I had a lot of like relational pain.
Yeah.
And so there was something about, and it sounds kind of funny, but like my relationship to an object that was safe and secure.
You're like, I don't have to worry if you're going to reject me or not.
Like my favorite place in the whole world is Yosemite. And I had a meltdown looking at El Cap because it's this rock that's just so big and feels like it goes up forever and ever and has been there for like a gajillion years. And my counselor would just, for a while, for such a long time, he'd just take me back and be like, okay, go back to El Cap. And then look up and see the big rock. Do you see how it's not going anywhere? Do you see that like no matter what happens, there's that rock and it's consistent? Do you want to go up and feel the rock? Do you feel, what does the rock feel like? The rock feels hard and smooth and like it's not going anywhere and it's stable and it's secure. And then how does my body respond to the awareness of that resource? And it's almost like I am, like having a relational experience with the rock. Yeah. Which
because you're like, there's something I can count on. There's something, I'm not alone. There's something I trust. Yeah.
It's like it's something that represents a need that I needed being met in a way that felt tangible in the present moment, that felt real to me.
Yeah.
And I think like one thing I did think about a lot was the sense of like me just being here in this present moment, the fact that I am breathing, the fact that I can like be alive, that there's like aliveness in my body, is that there was evidence of some things that helped me be okay.
Yeah.
Like there was evidence of like some moments that I must have had something help me. And there was something about like that awareness of like, I know that there's just truth to like things have helped me be here. Even like when it comes to people and love, there is a concept that's where if babies aren't held, that they it's failure to thrive. They literally die.
Mm-hmm.
And there would be times I would just sit there and I'd breathe and I'd be like, the fact that I'm breathing
means I was loved enough
to be here.
To not have failure to thrive.
To not have failure. Like, I'm breathing, I'm here, I'm alive. I can feel the aliveness of my heart beating.
Mm-hmm.
I can feel the aliveness of the breath moving through my body. I can know that there were things in my life that helped me make it.
Yeah.
And the idea is often like, if there were things that helped me make it then, there will most likely be things that help me make it in the future.
Yeah.
And like, I think our brain is naturally wired to say if it's happened before, it's most likely to happen again. Right. And so gathering that present moment experience of safety. And then for me, also thinking about like, can I remember things that happened that did make it? Like one little experience that I had that did make it okay. Like, oh, at the end of that really hard day, I got to go lay on a bed.
Yeah.
And the bed was soft.
Yeah.
And the bed was warm.
Yeah.
And it held me. And I was held by the bed at the end of that incredibly hard day of that season of my life. And that helped me be here. That like helped me make it.
Which, and what you're talking about is embodiment. Like you just described the feeling of being in a bed and that feeling safe and that feeling cozy and that feeling relaxed. And you only can experience that if you are getting in your body enough to start to notice those moments. And again, you don't have to get in your body to feel all of the pain.
Yeah.
You can just start to feel like, I think that's the fastest way, is to just start to notice those little things. Even if you just like, after listening to this podcast, you go home and you literally think about when you crawl into bed, what is one good sensation you have when you crawl into bed?
Yeah.
That is like probably one of the best resources. I should use that with clients because almost everybody I know has a positive
bodily remembrance of that
when they get into bed at the end of a long day.
Yeah.
And so if you just start to notice, because like right now, because I've worked on getting in my body more, I can think through right now what that feels like. I can be like, oh, you just kind of like relax and you get to melt into it and you get to feel like, oh, I can let go of all of the things that were hard. And now I'm fully supported and I don't have to hold on to anything in the world. And that like feeling of like being able to be heavy and not like that feeling of just joy, even like the feeling of like, the day is over. I made it. And now I get to do something that feels really safe, like sleeping. Now, it might not feel safe to everyone. If you have insomnia, it's probably a different experience. But but because if you learn to pay attention to what that practically feels like in your body, that's helping you switch your brain over to look for safety instead of threat.
Yeah, which I always think, wow, to me at least, from my story, it feels so beautifully redemptive that my body can be a positive resource. Like there's something about that experience of like the place that housed so much pain also is something that has a positive experience to give to me.
Yes.
That can
safety
house safety
joy.
And has the capacity to hold positive experience towards me. Like it almost was like I became in a relationship with my body where I could understand that my body wasn't out to get me, wasn't out to destroy me, wasn't out to ruin my life, but was like wanting me to feel goodness and wanting to offer me an experience of aliveness and presence. And to me, that just feels so beautiful and redemptive, that the very place that we feel so scared to be in can be offering us something positive. And honestly, like for me, I remember probably part of what started the journey for me was when I was in eating disorder recovery. They had me do really simple things like, do you know when you're full? And I was like, no.
Most people don't.
Most people don't. Do you know when you're hungry? When I'm like starving and I want to eat people's heads off. Like that was like I had like no scale. And so they had me do things like where you had to rate your hunger on a scale from 0 to 10 every day, like 3 times. Actually, it was more than that. It was 6 times a day because I had to do it 3 meals and 3 snacks. And I'd have to, before I would go to eat, an alarm would go off and I'd have to like gauge my hunger. So I'd have to like go to my stomach.
How hungry are you?
How hungry are you? Scale of 0 to 10. And that honestly began the process because I just had to start thinking about it and then remembering what the experience felt like on the inside. Like, oh, what does that feeling? because they had a couple of like descriptor words. Like I remember they were like, what type of hunger? Does it feel like it's jabbing you in the stomach? Does it feel like it's moving around? Does it feel like it's constricting? And so I had to pick off of a list of like descriptor words of what the hunger felt like. And it was like it opened an awareness to me of like, oh, and then they would rate like when you ate something that tasted good, they'd encourage you to like stay in the positive sensation of eating something good. So like, what did the taste feel like? What did you like about the taste? And then I had to think about it. And like, I guess I liked that it was salty and sour at the same time. And they're like, great. And it was so fun to have someone like cheer you on about that. But so I had to like get in the habit of like describing and like actually tuning into my personal experience. And I think like
over a positive body thing.
Over a positive body experience. Like when you feel like comfortably full, when it's like just right. What does it feel like to hit the spot in your stomach when it feels good? And honestly, I felt like first I thought I'm allowed to feel that, which was such an interesting, like funny and like instinctual reaction of like, I don't know, I was allowed to like feel nice things.
Totally.
But then just getting in the habit of that then opened up awareness for other positive sensations that I could feel and connect to.
It's really good. Yeah. It's really good. I mean, and this is a much better way to learn to be in your body is a much better way than to figure out how to eat than what you were doing before, which is logic rules.
100%.
Rules and then breaking rules. And then like eating is very overwhelming if you're not connected to your body.
Oh, 100%. And honestly, like in some ways it was so interesting how it helped with trauma because it was a way that I had to connect with my body every single day. Several times I had to be like, what am I actually experiencing over and over? And
again, it's asking you a practical question that isn't about your trauma.
Yes.
So it's not about like, what do you feel about watching your mom waste away? It's like, how hungry are you? And people don't realize that the grounding senses. I mean, this is, it's so true. You know, when I first started seeing a trauma counselor with panic attacks, it's like, go to your five senses. What do you hear? What do you see? What do you smell? What do you taste? What are you touching? There's so many different things that we do, but those things actually really help us heal.
100%.
And it's annoying because it doesn't make any sense to logic.
It feels so oversimple.
It feels oversimple until you understand the body-brain connection, the body nervous system connection, the body mindfulness connection. But it does feel stupid. But grounding techniques are incredible.
Yeah.
Breathing techniques, regulation, all of that. But we're close to wrapping up. So I will just bring the full circle of because we started talking in the last episode about healing. Yeah. And what I would say is I was so dysregulated and in constant PTSD around healing. Yeah. And so part of me had to one thing, I quit going to I didn't go to any healing services. Yeah. I stopped all of that because all I could feel was my desperation and striving. Yeah. And I was like, that's not helpful for me. And I quit going to a church that talked about breakthrough all the time. Because I had to not have that, my nervous system do that, the roller coaster of
the up and down,
hope up, hope down. And then listening to Roger Sapp, which was so helpful because I realized I had so many crazy beliefs about healing and so many, like I really did believe that God was okay with me, like wanted me to be sick almost because sickness could teach me to be a better person, which is a horrible theology and not logical. Like now I laugh at it because I'm like, I'm the worst version of myself sick. Like I am not learning. That is not like kids stay home from school when they're sick because that's not when you learn the most. Yeah. That's not, and
you don't learn good when you're suffering.
No, your brain, you're literally scientifically, your triggers when you're in suffering shut down your capacity to absorb things. So I am the least likely to become a better person or to heal or learn and grow through sickness.
Totally.
So there was a lot of things like that when I listened that I started. I mean, and it took me, I have been listening to his stuff for like 3 or 4 years straight. And that's how deep some of the beliefs were for me of like, it took me a long time to believe God didn't want sickness because I had spent so many years using my experience to try to figure out some purpose inside of the pain.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm sick. I believe in God. So God must be using the sickness to do something great in my life.
Yeah. 100%.
You know, I had to come up with some kind of purpose to give meaning to what was happening to try to survive it. But here's the thing, when you make up stuff in trauma, it often perpetuates trauma.
Makes more trauma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I said this earlier, our theology affects our psychology so much.
It's such a good line. I want a t-shirt that says that.
I think I might make them someday, actually.
Yeah, I would buy it.
But so I started listening to it, and there's so many things it pushed on about bad theology.
Yeah.
But the other thing it did is it started to create an idea of a God. Like, it talks about Jesus who healed everyone in the multitudes. Everyone who came to Jesus for healing. There's not one story of someone coming to Jesus for healing and him not healing them. Yeah. Which is amazing. And so the concept of like that being a part of his nature. Yes. And so
the God who wants to heal.
A God who is healing incarnate. Like,
yes.
I started realizing he came on the planet and like most of what he did was heal people. Like, he taught, he healed people, and he died. Like, those are like three notable things. Like, he cast out demons too, I guess. But I just like, it was miracles all the time. And a lot of them were healing. And that's where a lot of arguments happened and but when I started thinking about it, what started shifting was that I believed God's personality changed based on my feelings and pain. So when I was really sick, this God who wanted to heal no longer wanted to heal. And so what I had to start doing is very similar to how you looked at El Capitan. Is that what it is?
Yeah.
I started, and this is new for me. So I don't want it to sound like I'm an expert in this. I was able to do it for the first time in the last 2 months. So every time I get sick, I still have PTSD come up.
Yeah.
It is crazy.
So
There's
hard.
a lot of body memories. And so I'm learning to unhook my nervous system from my physical symptoms. Because what we want is to never feel the physical symptom again so that we can feel safe.
Yeah.
That just isn't my story yet.
Yeah.
So what I'm having to do is when the physical symptoms feel the exact same as they did when I was almost dying, I have to actually get my brain to realize I'm safe, not that I'm unsafe. And so what listening to Roger Sapp has done for me over and over again is I'm starting, because I've heard it over and over again and I've wrestled through all of my things. For the first time in the last 2 months, I was able, when I was my sickest, and at the point where I go into that panic state of I'm not okay, I'm never going to be okay. When I go into that panic state, I was able to actually let go of that and hold on to this idea of like El Capitan, which is like there is a stable part of God's personality that is healer. Yeah. Not I need him to heal me to prove that. It has become not at all about like it stopped being, for a long time I was like, I will believe he's a healer when he heals me.
Yeah.
That's just what I believe.
Totally.
And now I'm starting to be like, I actually believe this is his nature. And so I can look at his nature, and what it did is it grounded me to something. It just made me feel like there was something that is unchanging. Yeah. My emotions are changing right now because I'm really sick, and I'm feeling abandoned and I'm feeling alone because honestly, I felt so alone in sickness.
Of course. Yeah.
So I feel unloved in sickness. I feel rejected. When I get sick, I like get emotionally insecure. I need my friends to tell me they love me, which is a real weird thing. So
so much sense.
What I'm starting to do, what I was able to do for the first time. So the past 2 months has been the first time I've been able to make some progress here where I'm like, there's something I'm able to anchor into. There is a God who loves me, whose personality is not changing, whose nature is not changing, whose nature is healing. And what I'm feeling right now is my pain blocking my ability to see that. But actually there is something safe that I can anchor to. I can anchor to that this is true and exists. And it was, it's hard. Let's be honest. I want it to be true. Yes. It is a conscious choice to not go into listening to my threat. and to not obsess over my threat and to not go into OCD looping over my threat, which is very normal for me to do.
Yeah.
But the feeling of like getting safe, and the first time when I did it, because I got so sick and everything was so bad, and I was able to go through it without panic, and I was able to go through it without going into despair, without getting suicidal, without like the first time, like I said, a couple months within the last few months.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. And this is what I'm learning. And I wish people could know this, that you don't like, I do think that I will get healed. So I'm in no way saying that. But what I thought is I need to be healed to feel safe.
Yeah.
And what I've learned is I need to learn how to regulate to feel safe. Ooh. And I can learn that in no matter what's happening, because I had no power over, can I make myself be healed? I mean, I tried to have power over God. I tried to manipulate God to heal me.
Yeah.
But ultimately felt powerless. So now I'm like, well, I don't have power over changing my circumstances to feel safe, but I have power over regulating, over connecting to an anchor point, over connecting to a safe place. Like, you know, it says Jesus was the same yesterday, today, and forever. And there's so many things about, like, I can see the healing nature of God through the whole Bible. And there's so many places. So it's like beginning to see that there is something that is immovable, that it never changed the whole time I was sick. And that only makes sense if you understand trauma and anchor points.
Totally.
Otherwise, it just sounds like religious gobbledygook. Where you're like, I'm saying like, just hold on to the nature of God while you don't feel it. Like that sounds great. That just sounds like religion. Like you just have to strive. It sounds like just trying harder. Yeah.
But
But that's not what it was. To me, it was this thing of like actually looking at, and I remember feeling like, I love The Chosen. I've watched The Chosen. I think it's such a good version of Jesus. They show the scene of Peter walking on the water. And you think about Peter, and it's a storm that is so bad they think they're going to die. And they're fishermen. So they're on the ocean all the time.
They're used to what a storm would be be.
Yeah. So this must be a mega storm.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like this is a crazy storm. And he's like, he gets out of the boat. Jesus calls him and he's walking. And then he looks at the waves and then he starts to sink.
Yeah.
And I have never understood that story until this process. Until trauma. And what it is like I have to look at an anchor point, and then my brain will tell me all of the things that are happening that are unsafe.
Yeah.
And I have to learn to fix onto the anchor point. So when Peter was on the boat, I mean, when he's on the water, Jesus was the anchor point. He's looking at Jesus and there's safety there and there's connection there. And there's like, I'm not alone and I'm going to be okay. Then he looks at the waves and he's like, oh my God, I'm not going to be okay. I'm going to die.
Yeah.
And so
he became threat aware.
Yeah. And so this is what I'm actively, and I don't know how long it's going to take me to unwind sickness from threat to safety. Yeah. But I know that I'm on the process of that. And that feels incredibly hopeful because I know just me being regulated means I will be healthier because stress is such a body stressor. So I'm like, if I can just learn how to be regulated while my body, half of the torment, just honestly, half of the torment was gone.
Wow.
I would say 70% of my torment was gone, even though my body was flaring up. Yeah. Because the panic has been so extreme for the last few years.
Yeah. And if the idea is,
for my whole life, the panic when my body isn't going good, that is where I always went. I went to PTSD. I have the most PTSD around my body. And so learning how to reorient to find safety is changing the game for me.
And also, like, I love what you're saying about the idea of safety not being on the other side of 100% security or 100% certainty. And I think a lot of the time, like, safety is the presence of connection, not necessarily the absence of any type of possible threat.
Yes.
And I love that that's basically what you're describing is sort of like leaning into the presence of connection of God as an anchor point is helping turn those relational connection circuits on, which again, it's like, if I believe that experience, like the experience of safety and connection, is only available when there's no ongoing threat, the urgency and the paralysis and the panic of that experience is traumatic.
Totally.
Because it's like, what we all need safety to be thriving. Like we all actually need, every human on the planet needs safety. And so if I think that experience is only on the other side of when my any type of threat is over, then it's very, very high stakes. And so I love this idea of like bringing in safety as a form of connection and anchoring to that and anchoring to goodness, and not necessarily meaning that there's no things that could pull me away from awareness of safety. Yeah.
So, and that, I think that was the gift of, and I'll just describe this last thing. Yeah. So I would feel really connected to God as like healer and with me in my process. And then I'd get really sick and I would feel all of the panic and he would disappear. Yeah. And then when I started feeling a little bit better, I'd be able to connect a little bit more to that, which is right. I was learning to connect to safety. Yeah. So I didn't have the capacity to connect in my trauma, but I was finding a way to connect over and over again until I was able to then start to bridge the gap of being able to bring the safety into the panic. And that's what I think Roger Sapp felt so safe. It was non-threatening. He's very easygoing. You can just Google on YouTube search Roger Sapp. I think he is such a great communicator. Maybe God created him just for me to save my life. Like I often think that, like his style of communication and his nonchalantness and just his like unwavering belief in God's compassion and God's kindness and God's involvement in humanity and how simple it all is. And he gave me eyes to see God in a way that I could truly anchor to, where I have protected that. I didn't listen to 25 different teachers on healing because I needed something that felt safe. Yeah. And that felt safe enough that then it could create safety. And now I can actually listen to other people talk a little bit. Yeah. Not a lot, but so anyway, I hope that you guys liked this. This is a deep dive. If you love this stuff, and like these connect so many dots for you, or you're like addicted, or you're like, I really need that. Our life consulting school, our life consulting masterclass
with us.
Is a year-long school, and people do it either because they love this stuff and they want to help others with it, or they do it because they know their life needs a total transformation.
Totally.
But everything we're talking about is what we spend a year doing a deep dive intensive, and we give them the homework, similarly like where you had to write out about eating and stuff. Like you have practical steps to learn. We give people homework. We help them practice. We help them learn. We teach them what compassion and love sounds like. We teach them how to anchor to points. It's a year-long school that can help you learn about safety.
And you're running alongside of a bunch of other people who also have the same language, who are learning the same things. Like there's such a beautiful momentum and just being a part of the environment is my favorite thing in the whole entire world. So you all should come and do it if you can.
It's so fun. It's so fun. So if you're interested in that, you can email support at stumblconsulting.com. My husband always gives us email.
I know. I was like, oh no.
stumblconsulting.com. We also have our compassion project that is out. You can go to Justin and Abby, that's abi.com, and get that, which is such a great healing tool for this pathway. And then we will be doing, we have courses running all the time. So those will be coming up for you guys, but I just wanted you to know about that. This is a episode. I feel so proud of it, Rachel. That felt really good. Like it's clear and people can get a lot of healing from it if they want. So spread this to other people that need to learn and hear. Send it to pastors. Send it to anybody in your life that needs a little bit more trauma information. I just think, gosh, I wish I have so much. Listen, I wasn't trauma informed, and I was leading emotional health stuff.
Totally.
So there's no judgment.
Yeah.
But learning trauma has transformed my life. And I wish everyone could get it, because you start to make sense for the first time.
And honestly, like sometimes I think we think if I don't have PTSD, then it
doesn't count.
But I'm like, no, like being in your body will change your life, whether you've had high levels of PTSD or not.
Yeah.
Like we're talking about tools that are radically transformational, and like just being present in yourself to experience love, to experience life, to experience just the experience of being human and the richness and the fullness of that. Like that is life-changing for you, for the people in your life.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this helps your sex life. This helps your ability to enjoy life more. It helps your ability to connect. Learning how to be in your body and connect to safety. We have a lot of students who haven't gone through trauma in our school, and often they are as unaware of their bodies as people who have gone through trauma.
Totally.
And as disconnected from themselves. And so this is something, I'm glad you brought that up. In my head, I was just so aware that this is everything that everyone needs to know.
Totally. Yeah.
But I'm glad you brought that up, because that's true. Yeah. Thanks for joining us. Rate, review, subscribe, share it, send it to all of your people. And thank you for being here, Rachel.
My pleasure. I loved it.
A lot of fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
The best.
We'll come back in 2 years and tell you how we're even more trauma free.
We'll give you the 2-year update.
All right, bye.